Something will change within you. Something won't be the same. You're through with playing by the rules of someone else's game. It's time to try defying gravity. How many of you know that song from Wicked? Thank you. So we've all heard that expression, reach for the moon and you may just get the stars. So we're going to talk about that today with the power of asking. And why did I choose that song? Well, of course, defying gravity is all about soaring, doing the things that you want to do in your own way. So on our agenda for the next 20 minutes or so are a few things. First of all, the gravity-defying ask to get all those things that you want in your career. Then we'll talk about the big fear, right? Because we often don't ask because we worry that we may be rejected. So we'll talk about how to bounce back and fly above rejection. Then I want to talk about how you can help others soar. Let me put this mic down. Can you still hear me? Hello? Yeah, back. So my work basically lies at the intersection of three areas. First of all, communication, emotional intelligence, and inclusion. And I believe that a combination of all three of these will really set you up and set up your organizations for success. And I've been lucky to work with big organizations like IBM, Deloitte, Meta, Google, and so on in this area. So what does gravity look like? Well, gravity is when you don't get that feedback, that developmental feedback that's going to help you grow and succeed. Or it's when you deserve a raise, you deserve a promotion, but you don't get it. Or maybe it's when you're not recognized for the efforts that you're making, or you're not given those stretch opportunities that will really help you show what you can do. So asking, this year there's a couple of themes going around for International Women's Day. There's the theme of inspire inclusion, and there's also invest in women. And I see asking as an investment in yourself, and it's also self-inclusion or personal inclusion. So I'm going to tell you a little story about a time when I really failed badly to do the ask. So years ago, it was my dream to be a professional songwriter. And so I applied for the MasterCard scholarship, i.e. put it on my credit card. So I applied for the MasterCard scholarship to go to Los Angeles for a music boot camp. So I get to the boot camp and I put my song into a contest for the best songwriter at the camp. And the judge of the songwriting contest was Madonna, her producer at the time, a guy called Pat Leonard. So we had the songwriting contest and I asked a few of the people on my team to perform the song because they were much better singers than me. So I'm there in the back singing backing vocals and lo and behold, guess what happens? My song wins. And Pat Leonard says, this song could be played on the radio tomorrow. So I'm thinking, well, he doesn't even know that I wrote the song. How can I ask him to help me get my song out there and give me a boost up with my music and my songwriting career? So I'm thinking, well, what can I do? Okay, when Pat Leonard leaves the room, what I'm going to do is just step in front of him and say, Pat, how can you help me? Can you help me to do more with my song? So I'm waiting, and then Pat eventually walks out of the room. So I walk up to Pat, and then what happens? I completely freeze. So my mouth opens and shuts like a fish. And Pat Leonard looks at me with horror, and then he walks off. So I really, really screwed up my big moment. And I want to talk about my mistakes in that time. So first of all, I downplayed my input. Any of you ever had a major input into a project, but you say, oh, I didn't do much really. No, it wasn't me, right? So you're just being a little bit too self-effacing and too low-key. Secondly, I didn't plan for my success. How many of us get involved in ventures and we don't even anticipate that we could succeed, that it could do really well and blow up? So I didn't even think about what would happen if that song had won. And then my approach to the stakeholder was really, really weak. Any of you done that before? You've spoken to a senior person and you just kind of collapse or just ends up in a sort of puddle on the floor. So, you know what, I don't blame myself too much, because you can put asking into the category of difficult conversations. And here's some data about the way that people respond when they've got to have these courageous conversations in the workplace. So 50% would avoid the other person at all costs. 37% would consider quitting their job to avoid having that conversation. And 11% actually quit. They quit rather than have a tough conversation. So I'd love to find out from you, in terms of asking, what's your experience with asking for what you want? So put your hand up if you're somebody who always asks, regardless of any circumstance. You always ask. Okay, not many. I'd probably say less than 10%. Okay, what about if you sometimes ask? Yeah, okay, good. Quite a lot of you. What about if you never or rarely ask? Because they should just know what I need. Anyone like that? Yeah, quite a few, surprisingly. And then what about you never or rarely ask because you would love to, but you would love to be bolder and more assertive? Yeah, so quite a few of you as well. So what are some reasons to ask? Well, there's many, but one is that it shines a light on the lack of support you may be getting. I did a session like this once for a big PR organisation, and somebody said that she had not had a performance review. I think she'd had 3 in about 7 years. And she said she was always asking her manager, and the manager just kept fobbing her off. So if you ask and you continually see that you don't get what you need, that's telling you something, right, about the organisation or about your manager or your team. Secondly, it lets people know that you want to succeed. Now, if any of you were here when I did my first appearance at this event, I talked about how I had been put on probation very early in my career. If I had just asked my manager, what did he expect of me, that would have probably saved that from happening. And then thirdly, and most important, I think, is that you feel empowered and in the driving seat once you start asking. So what are some things you might want to ask for? Well, of course, feedback might be that you want mentoring or sponsorship from somebody. Maybe you're not sure exactly what your role is and you want clarification. Could be you want a stretch assignment, a promotion, you want to transfer to a different department for an opportunity, or of course you may want different behaviour from a colleague. So I want to share with you my framework, the 7 W's of asking. And we don't have time to go through all of them, but I do have a PDF handout I'm going to share with you at the end. So the first W is what. What are you going to ask for? And we'll look at this in just a moment. Then we'll look at the words. So in between that comes, why are you going to ask? Who are you going to ask? When is a good moment? And typically a great moment is when somebody says thank you. Because then you can step in and say, oh, well, actually, would you mind if? Or I was thinking that. So the words, what you heard, and then finally, what next? What next? So one thing that you can do, and there are lots of formulas for asking, but here's one. And I know we're here at an event about data, but never discount the power of feelings. Never discount them. So if I go back to that time with Pat Leonard, the music producer, I could have said to him, if I managed to blurt out a few words, I could have said to him, Pat, I'm so grateful and I'm so honoured that you chose that song to be the winner. I would love to get it on the radio. Is there any way you could give me a few tips as to how I could do this? If you could help me, I would feel so grateful, and I'd be so excited about the impact that song could potentially make. Right? So it doesn't have to be really soppy, but I'm just sharing a little bit of my feelings. And it makes you vulnerable, yes it does, but that is a really powerful way to ask. And if you combine that with some of the data that you may have, that becomes a double whammy. So if you've seen me speak before, you know I love to make it a bit interactive. So I'd love you just literally to turn to the person next to you, and I'd love you to say to them, what's one thing that you would love to ask for? It could be in your work life, personal life. Literally, you've only got 20 seconds, and then I'm going to ask you to swap. You're in A's and B's. The person that goes first, A, is the one wearing the most red on their body today, right? So after 20 seconds, I'm going to yell out, change, and then you switch over. Right, off you go. Okay, switch over. Time for B, please. Okay, I said it was a short share. Thank you. Now what you may want to do, you've probably all heard of big talk as opposed to small talk, where you just start the conversation with something meaningful. So maybe if you bump into strangers or people you want to talk to here today, just start by saying to them, what's that one thing that you want to ask for? And you're straight in there with something really meaningful in conversation. Okay, so let's talk about that fear. The fear that they may say, no, no, right? So you might worry that you'll be rejected if you ask. So let's think about how we can use asking to bounce back from rejection. Okay, so I'm going to share with you my 5 R's of rejection. The first one is relax, because this may not be the end. Have you ever asked, you've plucked up the courage, I'm going to ask, and then you feel deflated and you feel like this is it, it's over. Okay, so it may not be the end, relax. Secondly, reassess. Was your ask powerful enough? My ask to Pat Leonard was weak as anything, right? At least I can reassess that and say, okay, next time I'm going to be better. Reframe. Can you go around that person who said no and find someone else to ask instead? Regroup. What is next for you? And then the big one is return. So many of us feel like when we get that no, we can never ever go back to that person again. Somebody once approached me online and said, Shola, can you please be my mentor? And I was really busy at the time. I said, I'm so sorry, I can't. She didn't even respond to me and say, well, thanks for letting me know. So literally a couple of weeks later, an opportunity came up that would have been perfect for her. And I thought to myself, well, who was that person again? Oh, she didn't even come back to me. I don't know if she's angry, if she's upset. Let me give it to somebody else. So make sure that you always keep in touch with those people, even if they rejected you. A great question is, you've said no. Is that no never or no not now? And then they can tell you, okay? So don't let rejection stop you. So as I said, I will be sharing all this information in PDF format, a little bit more detailed than I've had time for today. And then also, hands up if you're an introvert. Anyone here introverts? Quite a few of you. So I'm starting up a community. I used to do some training. I did some workshops for women in data during lockdown. And people said they found them valuable. So I'm starting up a community called Big Talk for Quiet People. So if you sign up for the PDF, I will share that with you. We'll get that going in the next few weeks. So here's a QR code for you. If you grab a shot of that, I will show the QR code again before I leave. But if you just scan that, it'll ask you a few questions, and then I can get my team to email you with the PDF so that you've got all the slides from today and also a bit more information regarding asking. But the last kind of asking I want to talk about today is asking not just for ourselves, but asking in a way that supports other people. Now, I talked about the fact that I work with empathy, I work with emotional intelligence, and empathy often starts off with curiosity, asking people, what are their goals? How can I support you? So I want to talk finally about asking to help us support and include other people. So going back to that fateful trip to Los Angeles, so we were in a singing class, and there were about 20 of us, and we were singing along with a teacher. And you know what it's like when most people can carry the note, but there's one person, the voice is, so we're singing along, la la la, So the teacher says, right, everyone stop. And so she goes around one by one and she says, right, just sing that note. And so when we heard that, we were all cringing in our seats thinking, I hope she's not going to humiliate this person in front of everybody. But what the teacher did, she paused and she did something really important. And what she said to this woman was, how committed are you to being a professional singer? And so the woman said, yes, I'm really keen. I really want this to happen. So the teacher said, okay, if that's what you want, this is what you must do. And she gave her quite a rigorous, arduous routine of listening to notes and singing back and ear training. And I know if she said that to me, I'd been on the first plane back to Heathrow. But what she did is she lit up the way for this person to be successful with questions. She didn't say, well, look, you know what? You should probably think about something else to do because your voice can't handle it. But she showed her what she had to do. She couldn't do the work for her, but she at least gave her a pathway forward. Now, I'd love to say that that woman, today we know her as Beyonce. No, I don't know what happened. She's not Beyonce. But the point is, she had a pathway towards success through asking. And I love to say that encouragement is a gift. It's a gift that doesn't cost us anything, but it can be really powerful for the recipient. So I'd love you to think about now, what are your next steps? We've talked about the power of asking, and we've talked about you thinking of one thing that you can ask for. We've talked about you finding somebody to return to stay in touch with, because that opportunity may come back in a different way. And then we've talked about you being empathetic and encouraging of other people using questions. So of those three, put your hand up if you thought of something really useful and powerful to ask for. Yep, some of you, a little timid hand there. Okay, you kind of did. So encourage each other. Again, maybe stay in touch with the person you spoke to, you shared with, and maybe say, right, let's touch base in a week. Make sure you do the ask and let's share, let's exchange what happened. Okay, how many of you are thinking of somebody that you can return to because you made that ask and you forgot to stay in touch, or you just thought it was all over? Okay, so quite a few hands. And then how many of you are thinking of somebody perhaps on your team or in your life that you can empathize with and ask questions like, how committed are you? Do you mind if I make a suggestion? This is what might help you to move forward. So how many of you have somebody in your life or work like that? Brilliant. And those people will thank you. They will thank you for that opportunity. We all have people in our lives who were mentors, or they saw something in us that we maybe didn't see in ourselves. So you can be that mentor. You can be that person who encourages somebody to do more, to be more. So what I want to do as I leave today is encourage you to reach for the moon. And as we say, you might just get the stars, but at the very least, you will be defying gravity. Thank you very much.